Okay, so you're one of the premier outrigger paddlers, right? And you've been doing a lot of these downwinders. For us that are starting off with these downwinders, what kind of paddle is the paddle stroke the same as when we're surfing, or is it different?
Same. Again, you're on a planing hull. You're trying to get this board to plane across the water, and the minute you start throwing too much body into it, you start compressing the hull, and the hull is not going to ride these little chops. Your ideal, what you're trying to do is you're trying to look for those little chops to surf them. And the minute you start compressing or throwing your body or throwing over the top hand and coming over the blade a little bit too much, you start compressing the hull, and the board's not going to plane across the water. You've probably seen guys out there, I'm sure you've seen them go by you or in front of you, that look like they're hardly working and they're just moving. And that's because they're very efficient. All they're doing is keeping that hull planing, and they're catching every little thing that comes through.
So when you're catching the initial bump, you know, the first bump before you connect, do you want the nose to be dropping down or no?
The nose will always be dropping down at that point, but you never want to ride up the back of the wave. Because what happens is, like with some of the boards that I ride, they're faster than the bump. So if you paddle too fast, all you're going to do is ride up the back of the bump and slow yourself down. So it's all about timing and putting yourself in the bump and following it. That's why I said it, to you, it looks like they're hardly doing anything. And that's because what they're doing is they're being efficient. They're letting the board get in the bump, and they're staying in the bump. If you keep paddling up the back of the bump, all you're going to do is slow down again.
So do you try, you always want to stay in that trough area that you're in?
You're always trying to stay in the trough, and a lot of times staying in the trough is not paddling. Staying in the trough is not paddling. I mean, don't continue to paddle when you're in the trough. You should just stop paddling because you're in the trough. And if you keep paddling, you're going to go up the back of it. The other thing that people don't realize is once you catch a wave on a little bump on a very lively board, that putting your blade through the water actually slows you down more than it does speed you up. And that's because you're traveling over the water faster than you can pull the blade through the water. So you're actually slowing yourself down. You're better off not paddling and letting the board do its thing and resting than you are paddling.
So when do you actually punch through the next trough in front of you?
You never punch through the next trough in front of you. You're always waiting for the next trough to form in front of you. What happens in an open ocean situation, if you have the ocean is flat like this, these are wind swells, so they build up and they fall down. They build up and they fall down. So what you're trying to do is when one builds up, you're going to ride down it. Well, it's going to fall down and the new one's going to form in front of it. But so if you stay on the back side of the first one over here as you ride down it, the new one forms in front of it, and then it flattens out and the new one pushes over it like that, and you continue to drive down it. That's the problem. Everybody thinks you want to drive over the next one. No, you wait for the next one. The next one will happen in front of you. It all happens in front of you, not behind you.
And then for beginners, when you teach beginners, what are the biggest mistakes the beginners are making?
They paddle too hard. Paddle way too hard. They're not efficient. They're throwing way too much body in it. You have to relax. You have to let the board do what it wants to do. It's different if you're going to try to do a downhill run on a surfboard. Okay, it's not designed for that. But if you're using like a downhill special racer board or any of our boards, they're specifically designed to go fast, efficiently, not paddle. When we test our demo boards, we're not out there seeing how hard we can paddle and how fast we can go. What we look for is how the least amount we can paddle and how fast it'll go. So we put ourselves on a track of, let's say, we're going to paddle at 75%. Let's say we have 4 prototypes that we have laid out there. Everybody sets their heart rate monitors for 75%, okay? Efficiency. Okay, we're all paddling at 75% efficiency, which is doable, and you're not overstraining yourself. And we see where the boards end up after, let's say, 15 minutes. We all swap boards. We go into 75% efficiency again based on our heart rate monitors, and we see where the boards end up. So now we're not looking to see who's the strongest paddler. We're we're looking to find out what is the most efficient hull through the water. Because when you're in a long distance endurance race, you're not going to be able to hold that pace. You have to conserve, and you have to have a hull that goes right. It's like a race car driver or a bike. It's all about efficiency, and is that wheel spinning smoothly?
What are you doing when it's light winds and low bumps then?
If it's light winds and low bumps, it's even more important to be even more efficient. You can kind of hide when it's really big because the waves will pick you up regardless. But when it gets really small is where you'll really see the technique of the good guys come out, because they'll be able to ride bumps this big. And it's all about that efficiency again. If the board is designed, the way we try to design boards is design them in small bumps. Little teeny bumps that it's super lively. We have a thing, it's called maximum velocity of a hull. And what that means is the hull may pick up a wave really easy, but as it starts to speed up, you may feel it start to slow down a little bit. And that's because the bottom's too flat and there's too much surface area. Maybe it's got too much rocker. Maybe the tail's not releasing properly, the nose is not entering properly. Though it feels like it goes from 0 to 8 miles an hour really quick, as you start to go really fast, it tends to be counterproductive against itself, because the friction of the board, the rails, all the things start to play an effect as you go faster. Very similar to race cars or speed cars. You look at, you can put all the power in the world into it, but once you hit the maximum velocity that motor is going to create, you're going to work harder to take it to the next level, because the hull is starting to have too much friction with the speed. So it's real important that you have a hull that doesn't have a maximum velocity. The faster you go, the faster it wants to go. It never pushes back on you. That's really important.